So Noah and his family, Ham, Shem, Japheth, they lived up in the Armenian highlands at least a year after the ark rested on those mountains. So before they started doing their migration to Mesopotamia. So Ham and his family lived up there. Ham had a son named Cush. So when it says the land of Cush, I don't think that's talking about Ethiopia because they did not rise to power until way later when they sat on the throne of Pharaoh. But Moses wrote this Genesis in the year 16th century BC, way before Cush became a power. So I believe that this is referring to a different land of Cush. Actually, here is a map of the area there around the Black Sea. We have Armenia here. And there is I mentioned this in my book in chapters 1, 2, and 3. There is a black tribe way up here in the uh, city or nation called Abkhazia. They are part of Georgia right now and part of Russia at one time, but they are in this area here. Here's the Armenia highlands here. So Ham and his son Cush lived in this area right after the flood. So who is to say that Africa might have extended all the way up here? So it's just something to keep in mind, friends. And I talk about it in my book about this black tribe that's in Abkhazia right now. Where did they come from? Was it due to slavery or were there other reasons? And so I cover that in my books, chapters 1, 2, and 3. Okay, then. So let's talk about something else that's very interesting. Um, Also, the pull this up here. Let's talk about the Naki or the Nashi people, sometimes also called the Nasi people. The Tang dynasty called them the Yi tribe, and the Black American historian Joel Augustus Rogers, or J.A. Rogers, he cited them in Volume 1 of his book called Sex and Race in 1940. He talked about a botanist named Joseph Rock who first learned about this Nashi people while he was in China during the 1920s. This botanist named Joseph Rock. He did some work for National Geographic. And so J.A. Rogers mentions about them in his book called Sex and Race. And we can pull up some more articles about him. Here's another book that he did, and there's also another one. He did so many of them. So in his book, he talks about the Nashi people, and there is an article that appeared in the New York Times, November 26, 1933, talking about this botanist, Joseph Rock, and how he had discovered these people. I'd like to share that with you. Okay, this is from the New York Times, November 26, 1933. The article is titled, Says Nazis Now Have Culture 2,000 Years Old. Okay, it says, carrying with him the manuscript of what will be published as a 3-volume book on the little-known Naki tribe of far South China, Dr. Joseph F. Rock is now in Shanghai awaiting a steamer bound for Europe. Dr. Rock, who is a Vienna-born explorer and author of International Note, is an American citizen. He first penetrated into the Naki territory in northern Yunnan province. Okay, remember that, near the border of Tibet, about 12 years ago when he was making a trip of exploration as a botanical representative of the American Department of Agriculture. The Nakis, or black people, that's what the word Naki means, is black people, Dr. Rock describes as one of the most extraordinary races or tribes surviving in the world today. They number about 200,000. Of course, again, this was written in 1933, and have kept alive a culture at least 2,000 years old today. Here's some ancient paintings of the Nahi or the Nashi tribe. You can see, notice the color tone of how they were painted. See, they're a dark skin. Here's another one here. These are the Naki or the Nashi people of Yunnan province, China. So their history, it said, went back at least 2,000 years at the time that article was written. That would date that back to the year 68 BC. That would be during the time of the Western Han Dynasty, which came just after the Shang and Zhao dynasties. The Nahi or the Nashi, which means by the black people. Now, if you were living back in 1933 in the United States and you read that newspaper article in the New York Times that said that this botanist discovered this tribe in Yunnan Province, China, and they were called the black people, with all the segregation and racism that was going on at that time in the United States in the 1930s, and you read that article, how would you have understood those words, black people, in that article? Well, J.A. Rogers cuts right to the chase. Notice how he mentioned the article in his book. And again, this is Sex and Race, Volume 1, by J.A. Rogers. It says here in 1933, Dr. Joseph F. Rock, botanical expert of the United States Department of Agriculture, discovered an unmixed Negro people in China. He goes on to say, the Nakis, numbering 200,000, who he says had preserved their culture for 2,000 years. This Negro strain penetrated, no doubt, into the far north and shoved itself in the faces of the Tartar. So there you have it. That is what J.A. Rogers mentioned about these people. He called them Negroes. So we know what we're talking about when we're saying the black people. So these people also are noted for paintings and pictographs, which I'll show that to you in a minute. But you might ask, why is it that the Nashi people do not look dark-skinned today as they did back during the time of the Han Dynasty? Well, this is because of assimilation over time, due to the subjugation these people experienced from various Chinese warring tribes and who knows what other warring tribes that came against their kingdoms and their peoples. So due to assimilation, that is why they're no longer dark-skinned today in vast numbers. Now, here's another discovery. As I mentioned, in recent decades, a series of inscribed hieroglyphs and pictures have been found at Neolithic sites in China, including Jiahu, located in the Henan province near, guess where? The Yellow River. And we talked about that in our previous videos. So at the Jiahu site, archaeologists identified 11 shell markings which indicate that this tradition of hieroglyphs has much deeper roots in ancient China and ancient Chinese culture than previously considered. So it demonstrates a history of sign use in the Yellow River Valley during the Shang period. And let's give you a few examples of that. Here's one here. These are pictographs. And this collection of pictographic manuscripts are in the Yunnan Provincial Museum of China. It is considered one of the finest examples of the only living pictographic language in the world today. These Nashi pictographs differ from Chinese characters, though, and they are compared to Egyptian or Mayan hieroglyphs. And these are produced by the Nashi or the Naki people. Here's another example here of these pictographs that they found at these archaeological sites. So, friends, it's very exciting to read. Here is a map of showing you where there's a Yunnan province there. That is where this tribe still lives to this day, and they go back all the way to the Han Dynasty and probably older than that. And you can see the borders of Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia right nearby there. So in my book, again, I talk about these various tribes, not particularly of this one, but of the history of the Kunlun, the word Kunlun in Vietnam and Cambodia and Myanmar. Some people who are doing their DNA tests have this in their DNA. I know I have it. So it's very, very interesting. So again, we're just bringing out history for all to know so that we can put these things together. And especially in the stream of time where we're in now, when there's so much awakening going on, we need to find out what the Most High has in store for us, what His will is, and to be in harmony with it, because the HaMashiach is here. Yeshua is here. We need to study His Word, and there's much more coming out. I have a book that will be coming out that will go more into the line of Shem and how many of them even followed Yeshua. All right, y'all. Until next time, we'll talk another genealogy topic. So y'all stay safe in the meantime.